The Divine Empire's first challenge the encounter Captain Sarah Chun stood in the command center of the U.E.'s Defiant, watching the sensor readings with growing concern. The exploration vessel had been investigating the Kepler 442 system for 3 weeks now, searching for habitable worlds that might support human colonies. What they had found instead was something that challenged everything humanity thought they knew about the galaxy. The ship's advanced sensors had detected massive artificial structures throughout the system, cities that floated in space without any visible means of support, ships that moved between dimensions like ghosts, and energy signatures that defied every law of physics the human race had discovered in their centuries of space exploration. Commander Marcus Webb, the ship's tactical officer, approached her with a datapad in his hands. Webb was a career military man, someone who had served on the frontier for 15 years. His weathered face showed the kind of concern that came from experience with dangerous situations. "Captain, the readings are getting stronger," Webb reported. "Whatever civilization built these structures, their technology is beyond anything in our databases. The energy output from just one of their cities could power Earth for 1,000 years." Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her science station. The young scientist had joined the crew 6 months ago, fresh from the Advanced Physics Institute on Mars. Her specialty was xenotechnology, the study of alien science and engineering. She had dreamed of making first contact with an advanced alien race. Now that dream was becoming a nightmare. "Captain, I've been analyzing the construction materials of their space habitats," Vasquez said. "They're using some form of exotic matter that shouldn't be stable under normal conditions. But somehow, they found a way to make it work. This technology is thousands of years ahead of ours." Lieutenant Tom Harrison interrupted from the communications station. The young officer was responsible for monitoring all electromagnetic frequencies, searching for signs of intelligent communication. His job had just become much more complicated. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," Harrison announced. "It's coming from the largest structure in the system. The signal is incredibly powerful, almost overwhelming our receivers. I think they want to talk." Sarah had commanded exploration vessels for 8 years. She had made first contact with dozens of alien species, from the peaceful Altarians to the aggressive Zephyrians. But something about this situation felt different. The scale of the technology, the vast scope of their civilization, suggested that humanity was about to meet something far beyond their current understanding. "Put the transmission through," Sarah ordered. "Let's see what they have to say." The main display screen flickered to life, showing an alien being unlike anything in human records. It stood nearly 10 feet tall, with crystalline skin that reflected light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Its eyes were pools of liquid silver, and when it moved, reality seemed to bend around it slightly. The creature wore robes that appeared to be made of solid energy, shifting and flowing like captured lightning. When the being spoke, its voice resonated through the ship's hull, as if the words were coming from everywhere at once. The universal translator worked frantically to convert the alien language into something humans could understand. "Primitive creatures of the void," the being announced, "you have entered the sacred domain of the Vorthic Empire. I am High Executor Thainvel, voice of the eternal divine council. For 40,000 years, we have ruled this galaxy as gods among mortals. We have shaped stars, created worlds, and guided the destiny of countless species." Sarah stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back in the traditional military posture she had learned at the academy. She had dealt with arrogant aliens before, but this one seemed to believe its own propaganda about being divine. "I am Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earthship Defiant," she responded. "We come from the planet Earth, seeking peaceful contact with other intelligent species. We mean no harm to your people or your territory." Thanevel's silver eyes seemed to glow brighter, and the air around the transmission shimmered with energy. Earth. This name is unknown to us, but that matters little. You stand before God's tiny creature. The Vorthic have transcended the limitations of mortal existence. We command the very fabric of reality itself. To demonstrate this claim, the alien raised one hand, and suddenly the space around the Defiant began to change. Stars moved in impossible patterns, colors that had no names in. Human language painted the darkness. For a moment, it seemed as if the ship was falling through a kaleidoscope of impossible geometries. Dr. Vasquez worked frantically at her station, analyzing what was happening to them. Her instruments were reading energy patterns that shouldn't exist, forces that violated the fundamental constants of the universe. But her scientific training told her that there had to be a rational explanation. "Captain," Vasquez called out, "this isn't magic. It's incredibly advanced technology, but it's still technology. They're manipulating exotic matter to alter the local space-time configuration around our ship. It's like nothing we've ever seen, but the principles are based on theoretical physics we've studied." Sarah felt a surge of hope. If it was technology, then it could be understood. And if it could be understood, it could potentially be countered. Humanity had survived by being adaptable, by learning from every challenge they faced. "Impressive," Sarah said to the alien leader. "But we've seen advanced technology before. It doesn't make you gods." Thanevel's expression changed to one of surprise, then anger. Clearly, no one had ever questioned his divine status before. "You dare question the power of the Vorthic? We have conquered 10,000 worlds. We have enslaved 100 different species. Entire civilizations worship us as the creators of their reality. Then maybe it's time someone told them the truth." Sarah replied calmly. The alien's rage was immediate and terrifying. The space-time distortions around the ship intensified, and Sarah could feel the Defiant's hull creaking under stresses that normal matter was never meant to endure. Warning alarms sounded throughout the ship as systems struggled to compensate for the impossible conditions. Commander Webb checked his tactical displays, his hands moving quickly over the controls. "Captain, they're generating gravitational fields strong enough to crush a planet. But our structural integrity is holding. The ship was designed to handle extreme conditions." "How long can we survive this?" Sarah asked. "Unknown," Webb replied, "but I'm detecting something interesting. Each time they intensify their attack, their own power readings spike dramatically. Whatever they're doing to us, it's expensive for them to maintain." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her analysis. "Captain, I think I understand how their technology works. They're using exotic matter conduits to channel energy from higher dimensions. But the exotic matter has to be contained in specially designed housings. If we could disrupt those housings, their ships would lose their ability to manipulate reality," Sarah finished. "Tom, are you still monitoring their communications?" Lieutenant Harrison nodded. "Yes, Captain. They're using quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication across their fleet. But the encryption is based on mathematical principles we can decode." "What are they saying?" "They're confused," Harrison reported with excitement. "They keep asking why we haven't surrendered yet. Apparently, every other species they've encountered has immediately submitted when faced with their power display." Sarah smiled grimly. "Well, we're not like every other species they've encountered. Marcus, prepare our weapon systems. Elena, I need you to find a way to disrupt their exotic matter conduits." The crew of the Defiant worked with the efficiency that came from years of training and experience. They were explorers, but they were also soldiers when they needed to be. And right now, humanity needed soldiers. Thanevel's voice boomed through the ship again. "Your resistance is futile, primitive creatures. Submit to the will of the gods, or face complete annihilation." "We don't submit to bullies," Sarah said, "no matter what they call themselves." The first strike the Vorthic fleet began to move toward. The human ship, their vessels phasing in and out of normal space, like predators circling wounded prey. Sarah counted at least 20 ships, each one larger than the Defiant. Their hulls gleamed with that same impossible inner light that seemed to be the signature of their technology. Sub-Commander Krixnau commanded the lead attack vessel. Like all Vorthic military officers, he had been trained to believe in the absolute superiority of his species. They were gods among mortals, immortal beings who had transcended the limitations that bound lesser creatures. His small human ship should have surrendered immediately upon witnessing their divine power. Asterisk. High Executor, Krixnau transmitted to the flagship, the alien vessel continues to resist. Perhaps they are too primitive to understand what they face. Then teach them, Fainvel replied. Destroy their ship and broadcast the recording to their homeworld. Let this species understand the price of defying gods. The Vorthic attack formation converged on the Defiant, their exotic weapons charging with energies that could shatter moons. But Captain Chun had been studying their approach. Patterns, looking for weaknesses in their seemingly invincible technology. "Elena, have you found those exotic matter conduits?" Sarah asked. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her scanner array, excitement clear in her voice. "Yes, Captain. They're located at specific junction points along each ship's hull. The exotic matter has to flow through physical channels, and those channels are vulnerable to focused energy disruption. Marcus, target those junction points. Show them that gods can bleed." Commander Webb's hands moved over the weapons console with practiced precision. The Defiant carried the most advanced armaments humanity had ever created. Quantum torpedoes that could phase through conventional shields. Particle beam cannons that fired streams of accelerated matter at near light speed. And most importantly, adaptive targeting systems that could analyze enemy technology in real time. "Firing solution locked, Captain," Webb reported. "Quantum torpedoes. Armed and ready. Fire." The Defiant's weapons launched toward the nearest Vorthic vessel. Sub-Commander Krixnau tried to phase his ship into higher dimensions to avoid the attack. But the human weapons had been programmed to track targets across multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. The torpedoes struck the exotic matter conduits along the alien ship's hull with surgical precision. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, cracks of brilliant light began to spread across the vessel's surface as the exotic matter. Containment failed catastrophically. The mighty Vorthic Warship, a vessel that had participated in the conquest of dozens of worlds, suddenly found itself trapped in normal three-dimensional space. Its reality warping abilities were gone. Its invincible defenses were reduced to ordinary energy shields no more advanced than those used by any other spacefaring species. Sub-Commander Krixnau stared at his control panels in horror. Every display showed system failures. The ship's exotic matter cores were offline. The dimensional phase generators were dead. For the first time in his life, he was experiencing something he had never thought possible: vulnerability. "This is impossible," Krixnau whispered. "We are the Vorthic. We are eternal. We are gods." Commander Webb followed up the torpedo attack with a barrage of particle beams, targeting the now vulnerable alien ship's critical systems. The Vorthic vessel, stripped of its supernatural defenses, proved to be no match for human military technology. Alien ship's hull cracked open like an egg, spilling atmosphere and debris into space. Emergency force fields activated to contain the breach, but the damage was done. The first Vorthic vessel in 40,000 years had been crippled by an enemy they considered primitive. Silence filled the communication channels. The rest of the Vorthic fleet hung motionless in space, their crews trying to process what they had just witnessed. The impossible had happened. The gods had been wounded by mortals. High Executor Thanevel's image appeared on the Defiance main screen again. But now his perfect composure was cracking. His crystalline skin had darkened, and his silver eyes showed something that no Vorthic had experienced in millennia. Fear. "This cannot be," the alien leader said, his voice no longer carrying the same absolute authority. "Our ships are blessed by divine power. They cannot be harmed by primitive weapons." "Your ships are advanced technology," Sarah replied calmly. "Very advanced, but still just technology. And any technology can be defeated if you understand how it works." Dr. Vasquez had been monitoring the readings from the damaged Vorthic ship. "Captain, I'm detecting biological life signs from their vessel. They're not immortal like they claim. I'm reading casualties, including some that appear to be permanent." "You mean they can die?" Sarah asked. "Just like anyone else." This information was being intercepted by communication stations throughout the Vorthic fleet. For 40,000 years, the soldiers of the Empire had believed they were serving immortal gods who could not be killed or defeated. Now they were learning that their leaders were as mortal as any other biological species. Lieutenant Harrison looked up from his communication station with excitement. "Captain, I'm intercepting transmissions from all across the Vorthic fleet. The crews are starting to ask questions. Some of them are questioning whether their leaders are really gods if they can be hurt and killed." Sarah realized that this battle was about more than just military victory. The Vorthic Empire was built on a foundation of religious belief and fear. If that foundation could be shaken, the entire structure might collapse. "Tom, open a channel." "To the entire Vorthic fleet," Sarah ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Sarah looked directly into the camera, knowing that her words would be heard by thousands of alien soldiers who had never questioned their leader's divine nature. Soldiers of the Vorthic Empire, she began. "You have been told that your leaders are gods, but gods don't bleed. Gods don't die. Gods don't need massive fleets and weapons to enforce their will. Look at what just happened to your ship. If your High Executor is truly divine, why couldn't his power protect his own vessel?" The effect was immediate. Communication channels throughout the Vorthic fleet exploded with chatter as soldiers discussed what they had witnessed. Some remained loyal to their divine leaders, but others began to ask the questions that would ultimately bring down an empire built on lies. Thanevel's rage was incandescent. "Blasphemy! You dare turn our own people against us? We will show you the true power of gods." "Then stop talking and do it," Sarah challenged. "But I warn you, we're just getting started." Asterisk, the fall of false gods. The truth spreads the battle in. The Kepler 442 system had lasted only hours, but its effects were spreading across the galaxy at the speed of quantum communication. On worlds that had been enslaved by the Vorthic Empire for thousands of years, species that had worshipped their conquerors, as gods began to ask dangerous questions. On the mining world of Zarian Prime, the insectoid Zephyrites, who had labored in the exotic matter extraction facilities for 20 generations, looked up at the sky with new understanding. If the gods could be wounded, were they truly gods at all? On the agricultural world of Vergania, the plant-like Sylvans who had shaped their entire religion around Vorthic divinity began to whisper among themselves. Their sacred texts spoke of immortal beings who commanded reality itself. But the broadcasts from the human ship told a different story. High Executor Thanevel stood in the command center of his flagship, watching reports flow in from across the Empire. Rebellion was beginning to spark on dozens of worlds. Species that had been docile for millennia were suddenly questioning 40,000 years of divine rule. "My lord," reported Tactical Coordinator Vexon, "we are receiving requests for reinforcements from 17 different systems. The subject species are becoming restless." Some have even begun attacking our administrative facilities. Fainvel's crystalline skin darkened with fury. All of this chaos because of one small ship and its crew of primitives. How many vessels do we have in this system now? 47 warships, my lord. The third divine fleet has arrived as requested, and yet we have been unable to destroy a single enemy vessel. Fainvel's voice carried centuries of frustration. How is this possible? The answer came from an unexpected source. Sub-Commander Crixnell, his ship badly damaged but still functional, transmitted from his crippled vessel. My lord, I have been analyzing the human weapons and tactics. They are not fighting like other species we have conquered. They adapt, they learn. Every time we use our exotic matter manipulation, they find new ways to counter it. Captain Sarah. Chun had indeed been learning. The Defiance computers had recorded every Vorthic attack, analyzing the energy patterns and technological principles behind their reality warping abilities. Dr. Vasquez and her science team had worked around the clock to understand how exotic matter conduits functioned. Captain, Vasquez reported from her station, I've identified the central weakness in their entire technological system. All of their ships are connected to massive exotic matter generators located on their space stations. If we could disrupt those generators, the entire fleet would lose their ability to phase between dimensions. Commander Webb looked up from his tactical analysis. It would be a suicide mission. Those space stations are heavily defended, and they're protected by the largest concentration of Vorthic ships in the system. Not necessarily, Sarah said thoughtfully. Tom, are you still monitoring their communications? Lieutenant Harrison nodded. Yes, Captain, and there's something interesting happening. The crews on their ships are starting to fragment. About 30% of their forces are beginning to question orders. Some are even refusing to attack civilian targets in other systems. The truth is spreading faster than they can contain it, Sarah realized. Elena, how long would it take to modify our quantum torpedoes to specifically target exotic matter generators? 6 hours, maybe 8, Vasquez replied. But we'd need to get close to those generators. Very close. Sarah made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Then that's what we're going to do. But first, we're going to give every species in this galaxy a chance to hear the truth. The broadcast Tom Harrison worked frantically at his communication station, preparing for the most important transmission in human history. The Defiance quantum communication array had been modified to piggyback on the Vorthic's own communication network, ensuring that the message would reach every corner of their empire simultaneously. Channel open, Captain, Harrison reported. We're broadcasting to every inhabited system in Vorthic space. Sarah stood in the center of the bridge, looking directly into the camera that would carry her words to billions of enslaved beings across the galaxy. She knew that this moment would determine whether the Vorthic Empire fell or whether humanity would be destroyed for challenging gods. My name is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earthship Defiant, she began. I speak to all species who have lived under Vorthic rule, to all beings who have been told that their oppressors are gods who cannot be challenged or defeated. On 1,000 worlds and 100 different languages, alien translators worked to convert her words into something that enslaved populations could understand. For 40,000 years, you have been told that the Vorthic are immortal, that they possess divine power that cannot be questioned. But I have seen their ships bleed. I have watched their technology fail. I have witnessed their fear when faced with an enemy who refuses to bow. In the command center of the Vorthic flagship, Fainvel watched the broadcast with growing horror. Cut the transmission. Block their signal. We cannot, my lord, replied Communications Master Thexcor. They are using our own quantum network against us. To stop their broadcast, we would have to shut down all communication across the Empire. Then do it. My lord, That would leave us unable to coordinate our fleets or maintain control over our subject worlds. The chaos would be catastrophic. Sarah's voice continued to spread across the galaxy. The Vorthik are not gods. They are beings like yourselves, with advanced technology, but mortal bodies. They bleed when cut. They die when killed. They feel fear when challenged. I have seen all of these things with my own eyes. On the mining world of Zirion Prime, the Zifrit workers stopped their excavation and looked toward the sky with compound eyes that reflected new hope. On the agricultural world of Verdania, the Sildans began to shed the metallic neural implants that had suppressed their natural telepathic abilities for generations. On the industrial world of Feroz, the mechanical constructors began to question why they built weapons for beings who claimed to be divine but acted like tyrants. You have the power to be free, Sarah continued. Every species has the right to determine its own destiny. The Vorthik have ruled through fear and deception, but those weapons lose their power when you stop believing in them. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her modifications to the torpedo systems. Captain, I'm reading massive energy spikes from the Vorthik fleet. They're preparing for a full-scale assault. How long until the torpedo modifications are complete? 2 hours, maybe 3. Then we need to buy ourselves time. Sarah turned to Commander Webb. Marcus, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Elena, I need you to find a way to disrupt their fleet. Coordination. The Vorthik attack began with the fury born of 40,000 years of unchallenged dominance. 47 ships converged on the Defiant, their exotic matter weapons, creating distortions in space-time that would have destroyed any conventional vessel. But the Defiant was no longer fighting conventionally. Sarah had ordered her crew to think like humans, to use the adaptability and creativity that had allowed their species to survive every challenge they had ever faced. The ship danced through space, using the gravitational fields of the system's planets to slingshot between enemy formations. When the Vorthik tried to predict their movements using traditional tactical analysis, the humans changed direction in ways that made no logical sense. They fight without pattern, Sub-Commander Crixnall observed. Their movements are chaotic, unpredictable. Not chaotic, Thaneval corrected grimly. Creative. They are improvising solutions faster than our computers can analyze them. Dr. Vasquez had found a way to turn the Vorthik's own technology against them. By analyzing their quantum communication frequencies, she had discovered that the exotic matter generators on their space stations used the same quantum entanglement principles for power distribution. Captain, she announced, I can create a feedback loop in their power grid. It won't destroy their generators, but it will force them to shut down temporarily. Do it. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across the Vorthik fleet, exotic matter conduits began to overload as quantum feedback cascaded through their power systems. Ships that had been phasing in and out of dimensions suddenly found themselves trapped in normal space. Now, Marcus, target their exotic matter conduits while they're vulnerable. The Defiance weapon systems had been reconfigured based on everything they had learned about Vorthik technology. Quantum torpedoes and particle beams struck at the precise frequencies needed to disrupt exotic matter containment. One by one, the mighty ships of the Vorthik Empire found themselves stripped of their supernatural abilities. Without their reality warping technology, they were revealed to be nothing more than advanced but conventional vessels. The final confrontation, High Executor Thaneval stood alone in his command center, watching his empire crumble before his eyes. Reports continued to flood in from across Vorthik space. On 47 worlds, enslaved species had risen in revolt. Ancient weapons caches, hidden for millennia, were being opened. Species that had forgotten how to fight were remembering with terrifying speed. My lord, Communications Master Vexcor reported, We are receiving surrender requests from 12 of our fleet commanders. They wish to negotiate with the human vessel. Surrender? Thane Vel's voice was barely a whisper. The word does not exist in the Vorthic language. Perhaps it should. Came a new voice from the communication channel. Captain Sarah Chun's image appeared on the flagship's main screen. Behind her, the bridge of the Defiant showed a crew that looked tired but determined. They had been fighting for 18 hours straight, but they showed no signs of giving up. High Executor Thane Vel, Sarah said formally, I offer you the chance to end this conflict without further bloodshed. Your empire is collapsing. Your subject species are in revolt. Your own crews are questioning their loyalty. You can continue to fight and watch everything you've built burn, or you can accept that the age of the so-called gods is over. Thane Vel's crystalline features twisted with rage and desperation. You do not understand what you have done, human. The Vorthic Empire has maintained order in this galaxy for 40 millennia. Without our guidance, these primitive species will destroy themselves in countless wars. Maybe, Sarah admitted, but that's their choice to make. Freedom always comes with risks. But slavery is never the answer, no matter how you justify it. You speak of freedom as if it is some universal good, but look around you. Look at the chaos your words have created. Worlds are burning because of your interference. Sarah's expression grew serious. Some of those worlds were already burning. You just controlled the flames. The difference is that now, the people on those worlds get to decide their own fate. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her station. Captain, I'm reading massive power fluctuations from the Vorthic space stations. It looks like they're preparing to overload their exotic matter generators. What would that do? Sarah asked. Create an explosion equivalent to several supernovas. It would destroy this entire system and everything in it. Commander Webb turned to face his captain. There, willing to commit genocide rather than accept defeat. Sarah realized that she was dealing with beings who had convinced themselves they were gods for so long that they would rather destroy everything than admit they were wrong. But she also realized that not all Vorthic felt this way. Tom, open. A channel to all ships in the Vorthic fleet. Channel open, Captain. Soldiers and crew members of the Vorthic Empire, Sarah announced. Your leader is preparing to destroy this entire system, rather than accept that his empire is ending. He is willing to kill millions of his own people to maintain the illusion of divine power. Is this the action of a god or the action of a tyrant? The effect was immediate. Across the Vorthic fleet, crew members began to refuse orders. Engineering teams shut down exotic matter generators. Communications officers opened channels to coordinate with their counterparts on other ships. Sub-Commander Crixnell was the first to speak. High Executor, I have served the Empire faithfully for 300 years. I have conquered worlds in the name of divine order, but I will not be party to genocide. One by one, the commanders of the Vorthic fleet announced their withdrawal from the conflict. Ships that had fought for the Empire for thousands of years powered down their weapons and began broadcasting surrender signals. Thane Vel found himself alone on his flagship, surrounded by crews who no longer believed in his divine authority. The God Emperor of the galaxy had become just another mortal being, stripped of the fear and deception that had maintained his power. This is not possible, he whispered to himself. We are the Vorthic. We are eternal. We are gods. Captain. Sarah Chun's voice carried across the communication channel one final time. No, you were never gods. You were just people with better technology and bigger guns. But people can change. People can choose to do better. Epilogue. A new galaxy 6 months later, the Kepler 442 system had become the site of the first intergalactic council, a gathering of representatives from every species that had once been enslaved by the Vorthic Empire. The massive space stations that had once housed exotic matter generators now served as meeting halls where former enemies worked together to build a new future. Captain Sarah Chun stood at the observation deck of the newly established council station, watching ships from dozens of different species working together to establish trade routes, communication networks, and mutual defense agreements. Dr. Vasquez joined her at the viewing port, carrying a datapad filled with scientific reports. The technology sharing agreements are working better than anyone expected, she reported. The Zephyrites are teaching us about exotic matter manipulation. The Sildans are sharing their biotechnology. The constructors are helping us build more efficient starship designs. What about the Vorthic themselves? Sarah asked. Most of them are adapting well to life without empire. They're sharing their knowledge freely, helping to repair the damage their rule caused. High Executor Thainvel is in counseling, learning to deal with the loss of what he believed was his divine nature. Commander Webb approached them, wearing the new uniform of the Intergalactic Defense Force. Captain, we've received a message from Earth. The President wants to know if you're ready to come home. Sarah looked out at the bustling traffic of dozens of species working together, building something that had never existed before in galactic history, a truly free and equal community of worlds. Not yet, she said with a smile. Our work here is just beginning. Lieutenant Harrison called out from the communication station. Captain, we're receiving first contact signals from the Andromeda Galaxy. It looks like word of what happened here has spread even further than we thought. Sarah felt that familiar excitement that came with the prospect of meeting new species and exploring unknown regions of space. But this time, they would be approaching as liberators rather than conquerors, as teachers rather than tyrants. Set course for the Andromeda signals, she ordered. Let's see if there are any more false gods out there who need to learn what humanity is all about. The U's Defiant, now flagship of the Intergalactic Defense Force, powered up its engines and began its journey to the stars. Behind them, they left a galaxy that was learning what freedom looked like. Ahead of them lay infinite possibilities and the eternal human drive to explore, to learn, and to help others find their own paths to liberty. In the end, it had taken just one human warship to shatter the illusion that had enslaved a galaxy. But it would take the combined efforts of every free species to build something better in its place. And for the first time in 40,000 years, the galaxy had hope.